I think there's something deeply worrying about the story of Lydia Thorpe, which I'll come to in a minute. Because of the way she was escorted from the chamber, she is an elected senator in the Australian Parliament. And I don't quite understand how the parliamentary rules can allow for an elected senator to be escorted from the chamber for speaking out, even in a ceremonial occasion. So at the very start of the visit of King Charles to Australia, his address to the Australian Parliament was interrupted by an impassioned protest from independent Senator Lydia Thorpe. Thorpe, who is known for her staunch advocacy for Indigenous rights, disrupted the event, shouting accusations of genocide and using an F-bomb and demanding the return of Aboriginal land. She passionately declared, "You are not my king, this is not your land." And then she spoke about the colonies in very colourful language. I suspect really in many ways her, what should we call it, ejaculation made the whole event so much more entertaining and interesting and newsworthy. But the interruption serves as a reminder that for many Australians, especially Indigenous communities, the legacy of colonialism is not just a historical matter, but a lived reality that demands recognition and redress. Thorpe's career, marked by her advocacy for Indigenous sovereignty, situates her as a figure in the centre of this ongoing struggle for justice in post-colonial Australia.
Welcome, dear viewers, to our channel. Do subscribe for more insightful content. Today we delve into a topic that is sparking discussions worldwide: King Charles and the monarchy. It seems the royal sceptre is receiving a cold shoulder, a frosty reception in places where it once commanded respect and adulation. The public sentiment is shifting, and the monarchy is being placed under the microscope with criticism brewing. Now let's dive into the heart of the matter. Wherever King Charles sets his foot, a chorus of boos follows him. This isn't hyperbole or exaggeration, it's a stark reality that we've seen unfold in recent times. King Charles, once received with pomp and circumstance, is now greeted with a hailstorm of public outcry. It's a shift that's impossible to ignore. From the far corners of the globe to the heart of his own kingdom, the message is clear. People are growing tired of the monarchy. Take the recent events, for instance. Public protests have begun to become a common sight, an almost expected part of the royal itinerary. The voices of the people, once hushed and respectful, are now loud and demanding. The cheers have turned into jeers, the applause into protests. This isn't just a case of a few disgruntled citizens. This is a reflection of a much wider sentiment, a societal shift that's been brewing beneath the surface. It's a wave of discontent that's been gaining momentum, fueled by the actions or perhaps inactions of King Charles himself. The public isn't just expressing dissatisfaction. They're calling for change. They're questioning the relevance of the monarchy in this day and age. They're challenging the very foundations on which it stands. This isn't a mere hiccup, it's a seismic shift in the way the monarchy is perceived. One might argue that this is just a phase, a fleeting moment of public discontent. But the frequency of these protests, the passion with which they're carried out, suggests otherwise. It's a movement that's gaining strength, a tide that's proving difficult to turn. The voices of dissent are growing louder, their messages more pointed. They're not just calling out King Charles, they're calling out the entire institution that he represents. They're questioning its relevance, its role, and its place in our society. The public's discontent is palpable and growing. The monarchy, it seems, is no longer an untouchable entity. The walls of the castle are beginning to crack under the pressure of public scrutiny and outcry. The question now is, how long before they crumble completely? This discontent isn't confined to Britain alone. It echoes across the globe, as far as Australia. There, amid the sun-soaked eucalyptus trees and vibrant cityscapes, the monarchy met with a cold reception, one that echoed the chilliness of the British public's sentiment. In the heart of this southern continent, a protest was staged, led by none other than Lydia Thorpe, a senator with an iron will and a heart for her people. Thorpe, with her fiery spirit and bold voice, dared to call out King Charles during his visit. Her protest was more than a mere shout in the crowd. It was a warning, a sign of the times, a representation of the growing discontent with the monarchy. But Thorpe wasn't alone in her sentiments. A voice of reason chimed in from the academic world, providing intellectual support for the growing tide of discontent. That voice belonged to Professor Tim Wilson, a respected figure in the realm of political science. Professor Wilson didn't just throw his support behind Thorpe, he amplified her message, echoing her sentiments with his own well-articulated thoughts. Professor Wilson's support for Thorpe was not just an endorsement of an individual, but an endorsement of a growing global sentiment. He saw the writing on the wall and had the courage to read it aloud. He warned King Charles, cautioning him about the growing discontent and the changing tide of public opinion. He pointed out the monarchy's dwindling appeal, its fading relevance in a world that is rapidly moving towards equality and democracy. And yet, in spite of these warnings, in spite of these protests, King Charles continues to face a chorus of boos wherever he goes. This Australian warning, it seems, fell on deaf ears. Or perhaps it was heard but simply ignored. Either way, the result is the same. A monarchy that is increasingly out of touch with the people it claims to represent. It seems the monarchy's reach isn't as far as it used to be. With each passing day, with each protest, with each boo, this statement becomes more and more fitting. Australia has spoken, the world has spoken, and it's clear they're demanding a change. Professor Tim Wilson warned King Charles, but was his warning heeded? In the aftermath of the Australian incident, the criticism of King Charles has only intensified. The public's discontent has grown like a snowball rolling down a hill, gathering speed and size with each passing moment. King Charles, it seems, is finding it increasingly difficult to navigate the icy slopes of public opinion. The boos that greet him wherever he steps are a chilling testament to the frosty reception he receives from the very people he is meant to represent. But what of Professor Tim Wilson? He, who had the foresight to predict this chilly turn of events. He warned the king, he sounded the alarm, but his words fell on deaf ears. Now, his prediction echoes in the hollow halls of the monarchy, a haunting reminder of ignored advice. Professor Wilson's view of the monarchy as history is not just a personal opinion. It's a reflection of the current sentiment, a mirror held up to the face of a society that is growing weary of the monarchy's archaic ways. The monarchy, once a symbol of power and prestige, now stands on shaky ground. The foundations of centuries-old traditions and customs are crumbling under the weight of public scrutiny. The monarchy's decline is not just a possibility, it's a reality. The boos that King Charles receives are not just expressions of discontent. They are a symphony of voices calling for change. This is not just about King Charles, it's about the monarchy as a whole. The monarchy that has remained unchanged while the world around it has evolved. The monarchy that has chosen to cling to the past whilst the future beckons. The monarchy that has ignored the warning signs and continued on its path, oblivious to the discontent growing in its wake. So was Professor Wilson's warning heeded? The answer, it seems, is a resounding no. The monarchy's decline seems inevitable. In these changing times, the public's demand for change grows stronger. The monarchy, a bedrock of tradition and continuity, is being questioned, challenged, and even booed. All across the globe, the name King Charles is being met with a chorus of disapproval. This is not a mere expression of discontent, but a resounding call for change. The people are not just voicing their dissatisfaction, they are demanding reform. From the streets of London to the far reaches of Australia, the public's voice grows louder and more insistent. The monarchy, once revered and respected, is now being met with signs of protest, and the public's demand for change is becoming impossible to ignore. The instances of protests against the monarchy are becoming more rampant. It's not just a few isolated voices, it's a chorus singing in unison, calling for a shift in power, a change in tradition, a new way of governance. The people are questioning the relevance of a monarchy in the modern world. They are asking for a system that reflects the values of today's society, not those of centuries past. The monarchy is being scrutinized, its relevance challenged. The public's demand for change is not just about King Charles, it's about the monarchy as a whole. It's a call for a shift in power dynamics, a demand for more transparency, more accountability. The monarchy, once considered untouchable, is now being questioned. The people are demanding change, they are demanding a new way of governance. They are calling for a system that is more in tune with the times, one that reflects the values of today's society. The boos that greet King Charles wherever he goes are not just signs of discontent, they are a call to action. They are a sign that the public is ready for change, that they are demanding it. The monarchy stands at a crossroads. It can choose to listen to the public's demand for change, or it can choose to ignore it. But as the boos get louder, the choice becomes harder to ignore. The monarchy stands at a crossroads. In conclusion, the monarchy, with King Charles at its helm, is facing a crisis. The echoes of discontent are palpable, resonating in every corner of the world where King Charles is greeted not with cheers, but with vehement boos. This is a stark reflection of the public's growing disillusionment with a system that seems increasingly out of touch with the realities of our time. The warning signs were there, as Professor Tim Wilson rightly pointed out. His foresight was evident when Senator Lydia Thorpe of Australia boldly called out King Charles during his visit. Such audacious protests are not isolated incidents, but rather they're becoming the norm. They're a testament to a global community that is no longer willing to accept the status quo. The monarchy, once a revered institution, is now seen as a relic of the past. The public's demand for change is not a mere whim, but a clarion call, echoing across continents. The tide of public sentiment is shifting, and it's moving away from the monarchy. As we reflect on these developments, it's clear that the monarchy is at a crossroads. The path it chooses to follow will have a profound impact on its future. Will King Charles heed these warnings, or will he continue to steer the monarchy towards a precipice of irrelevance? Thank you for joining us in this discussion. Remember to subscribe, like, and share. Goodbye from Sussex Ambassador.